There is a tragic element to the lives of the orcs, for they were beings that were bred in cruelty, and whose very nature was a product of twisted corruption. To be punished and doomed for eternity would seem like a harsh fate, even for an orc, especially since they had no choice in the matter, for they were bred to be slaves of a Dark Lord. Hey guys, it's Card here, and in today's episode we'll be unraveling the mysteries surrounding orc mortality and their afterlife. So the question on orc immortality is a lot more straightforward and easier to answer, since Tolkien wrote that a typical orc lifespan was shorter than that of the Númenóreans. Now we know that the Númenóreans lived for around 220 years, and so there's no doubt that an orc life was shorter than this, and they were clearly mortal and could die of old age. Things get a lot more complicated when we discuss their afterlife, for it makes sense that their fate would be tied with the origins of the orc race. Throughout his lifetime, Tolkien came up with various theories to explain their origins, though he was never completely satisfied with any of these answers, and he never decided on a finalized version. A big hurdle that he faced were his philosophical and theological beliefs, for he reasoned that if elves and men could be corrupted into orcs, then there must be some way to redeem them after death. Otherwise it would imply that evil was a stronger force than good. One of the ways in which Tolkien tried to solve this issue was by coming up with the theory that orcs were simply wild beasts with a humanoid shape, and they did not possess a soul or a fea, and so they would have very little independent thought, since they were enslaved and controlled by their master's will. This would also mean that the orcs would not have an afterlife, since they lacked a soul, and that they were more like puppets that echoed their master's beliefs and thoughts, rather than rational creatures. Now, as we all know, Tolkien came up with other theories to explain the origins of the orc race, and one of the first and most prominent theories was that they had once been elves and men that had been captured and corrupted by Morgoth, who managed to twist their very nature and turn them into orcs. In this case, the orcs would still be related to the children of Ilúvatar, no matter how corrupted and twisted they became, and so they would still possess a soul, and the same fate of the elves and men would await them after their death. We don't really know much about the afterlife of men, other than that the souls of men weren't confined to Arda, and they were destined to leave this world, and so if orcs originated from corrupted men, it would stand to reason that they would share this afterlife. On the other hand, the elves were fated to remain in Arda after their death, and since we know so much about the elven afterlife, it's a lot more interesting to explore the fate of the orcs, assuming that they were corrupted from elves. For after elves died, their spirits were summoned to the halls of Mandos in the Undying Lands, and they would go through a period of spiritual healing before they were reincarnated, assuming they wanted to be reborn, and if the Vala Mandos allowed them to. If orcs did indeed have an elven strain in them, they too would be summoned to the halls of Mandos after their death, and I imagine that they would undergo a similar process of healing, though unlike the elves, Tolkien wrote that the orcs would not be reincarnated, but they would be held there until the end of the world. This wasn't an entirely unique situation, for some elves such as Feanor that had committed atrocious deeds in their lifetime also suffered a similar fate, and he would only be reincarnated after Dagor Dagorath, which was the apocalypse of Arda. Even though this seems like extra punishment for the orcs, I imagine it was more likely to do with the time needed to heal their souls and cleanse them of their evil deeds and nature, for we know that a soul that committed evil deeds would take longer to heal and to be corrected. It's also possible that the orc spirits could very well refuse the summons to the halls of Mandos, for the Valar couldn't force them to respect it, and we actually know that in some rare occasions even elven spirits refused them, though these spirits were typically tainted in some way, and they would linger in Middle-earth, haunting trees or hidden places that they had known in their past lives. I think it's plausible that some orcs, if not most of them, would refuse these summons, and we know that these spirits that lingered in Middle-earth would often be filled with bitterness, envy and self-pity, and they could easily be enslaved by a Dark Lord's will and forced to do his bidding. Sauron and Morgoth could also try and master them through necromancy, and so as horrible and sad as it is, it's possible that even in death, the orc spirits might have been forced to serve their masters once more, and perhaps they might have even been re-embodied in some twisted fashion, such as the spirits that dwelt within the Silent Watchers. There is one final afterlife that is worth discussing, though it only applies to a few of the orcs, for some of the very first and most powerful orcs had once been lesser Maiar spirits that chose to follow Morgoth, and they took on the form of orcs, and they would slowly become more earthbound and weaken over time. After their death, these spirits would be damned just like Sauron, and they would be unable to reform physically, doomed to simply be a spirit of malice that was consumed by hatred. Anyway friends, this wraps up today's video and I hope you enjoyed it. How do you feel about the orc afterlife? Is there any one of these theories that you like most, or do you think something entirely different awaited them? And finally, do you think that the orcs deserved some form of redemption if they were indeed related to the children of Iluvatar? As always, I'd like to thank my patrons who have really helped to elevate this channel. It wouldn't be the same without you. And I would like to express how grateful I am for your support, especially our Wizard tier patrons, T. Gorman, Mike Feeney, Roland Mervold, and Jacob Williams. If you too would like to help support this channel while unlocking some cool perks, I'll be leaving a link to my Patreon page in the video description below. I'll also be leaving links to our Instagram, Facebook, Discord, and Twitter communities, so follow us if you'd like to have some extra Lord of the Rings content in your day-to-day lives. As always, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe to join our fellowship today. I hope to see you all in my next video, where together we'll once again explore the magical world and lore of Middle-earth.